So I'm going to turn that on. You're going to get a little notification here. On the screen, you see just a quick welcome there and then an agenda. You should all have a copy of that agenda. If not, I'm going to drop a copy in the chat again so you can download it. And on the back of the agenda, if you want to offload it, there are going to be some opportunities to write things in. So if you print it, or you obviously don't have to write it down. If you just have it online, you can just keep track of these things. But we want to keep track of 3 things that you've learned today and tomorrow, 3 things that you'll do to prepare before your next year, because we'll talk about planning and give you lots of opportunities, and names of people that you can reach out to along with their contact information. And imagine they'll share, or you can ask um, for that information uh, as well. So, and that's on the back. And then the QR codes on the bottom are things that you can scan with your phone. So if you print this out, you can scan it and get a link to all the resources, all the PowerPoints and everything that we are sharing today and tomorrow. And then the blue one is a survey that I will drop into the chat tomorrow, but you'll also have access that way. If there's any feedback you need to share with us, we definitely want to hear about what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can do better next year, et cetera. And so we can get that feedback from you. But like I said, if you have anything you want to share, you can use a survey at any time. Otherwise, I'll share it at the conclusion of tomorrow's session and ask that you do it at that time. So that's a little bit about that. My job today, mostly, is going to be to introduce a couple of people and keep us on line here. This is a virtual training, though, so I want to make sure that everybody has certain skills. I'm going to be spotlighting the speakers so you can kind of get them. And when somebody's spotlighted, they're the only ones who are going to be on the recording. So like right now, even though you can see the other people around the rim of the screen, the recording is only capturing my image because we want to be that the central focus. So if we don't want you to be concerned if you're just kind of looking at the screen, it's not going to be there in perpetuity unless spotlighting's off and we're just having a discussion. And there will be opportunities for discussion. And to keep things orderly, I want to make sure everybody knows where the raise hand icon is on there. So if everybody would give that a try, at the bottom of their screen, there's a raise hand icon. Go ahead and just raise your hand so I know you found it. Sometimes it might be under something that says reactions or something else like that. And then once you've raised it, go ahead and lower it. And that's going to be a great way. If you want to say something, raise your hand, you'll be identified. And then if we forget to lower it for you, just go ahead and lower it. And otherwise, we'll come back to you again for a second time. So that is basically my introduction for now. Before I introduce our district governor-elect, does anybody have any questions about the format of today's training or any of the technical aspects? Good. All right. Doing something right. So next, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our district governor elect, Mandy Warfield Granger. I think I saw her here a minute ago in the participant list. There she is. And I'm going to add her spotlight. Mandy is the member of the Rotary Club of DuPont Circle, and her priority for the year is service, community service. She was the service director for her club, and she'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But I'll welcome Mandy Granger, Mandy Warfield Granger.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I know that it's been a busy couple of weeks. It's always a long day in the middle of the week. So I appreciate you joining us after your workday today. And we will see you again tomorrow. But just to kind of kick off the tone for the coming year, in Rotary, we're not just individuals, but a united force dedicated to transforming lives. Through community service projects that address local and global needs, like improving education, providing clean water, and supporting health initiatives, we strengthen our communities and inspire hope. However, service isn't enough if the world doesn't know the story. Building a strong public image allows us to connect with more people, attract partners, and inspire others to join our cause. When we show the world our commitment to service and integrity, we invite them to become part of something greater. This past Rotary year, DG NOMI challenged our clubs to collaborate and increase their activity. And then what might happen if we also tell the non-Rotarians in our community about the good things that we're doing and invite them to join us? So my draft priorities are service. Service has always been one of my priorities in Rotary. I ended up somehow being the service chair for my club before I became a member. I'm everyone's target market. But I also feel like more hands make less work. Is there another club working on the same priority as your club? And would it be easier to work together? Public image. Let's talk about it. We're experts at telling other Rotarians what we do, but do you tell anyone outside of Rotary? And membership. A zone public image chair in the UK told me once that if we are better with our public image, we won't have a membership problem. Let's test it out. I can see in DACDB what new members your club has inducted, but I want to celebrate the potential members you have too, because that means you're getting the word out and finding people to potentially join. Next month, I will go to Orlando with 534 of my DGE classmates from around the world. And we will talk to incoming RI president, Mario Cesar Martins de Camargo, we'll call him Mario, about his priorities. So you'll hear more from me about his priorities at CPETS and how our district priorities fit in with what RI is doing. My draft priorities might be tweaked. Yours can too. Today, you'll learn the building blocks for creating a plan for your year as president, and we'll work together in March on more of those plan specifics. And I look forward to working with all of you. And Chris, I don't mean to go off topic already. We're 8 minutes in, but do we have enough flexibility in the agenda for people to do introductions?
For the whole group,
Yes.
individual. Can we do
You
introduction?
can say no, we'll table it for later.
Let's table it for a little bit later here so we
Okay.
can get
All
Barton
right.
kicked
All
off
right.
on time.
I just
And
feel like I'm seeing all these people that I haven't met before, and
well, we do have some time in here that there's
okay.
some flexibility later.
All right.
So let's
All right.
do that.
I'll sit and wait.
Okay, great. Well, before I introduce our next speaker, I see a hand raised. Stuart, is that from earlier, or do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I do have a question, Chris.
Okay.
May I have the contact information for Amanda, our district governor, her email address?
I'll ask her to share that with you in the chat.
I can put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
asking. Great. Well, thank you very much. The next on our agenda is, it's my pleasure to introduce our past district governor, Barton Goldenberg. Barton was district governor the year I was club president. And aside from all his insightful leadership, the one thing that I remember most is every Monday morning waking up to a 10-minute video with him talking about how everybody's doing, his priorities for the year, upcoming events, and what we can be doing as well. So he's going to be talking to us about leadership in general, and then about some goal setting later and strategic planning. So I'll pass it off to our past district governor, Barton, and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chris, very much, and thank you, Mandy. So I'm going to share my screen, and this should allow everything to work just fine. So confirmation from anybody that you can see my screen?
We can?
Okay, good. Let me make it bigger. Okay, good. So a hearty welcome to everybody, and what a wonderful group of new presidents, the best job in Rotary. I've always said that. It's the one job where each week you have an opportunity to lead a production. It's your show, it's your club, it's your vision and your leadership. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be at your best each and every week. I wanted to make a quick introduction because 12 years ago, in 2013, I was sitting in your very seat as I became the president of my Rotary Club, which is the Metro Bethesda Rotary Club. And I thought about this over the last few weeks, and I thought, I wonder if I shared my trajectory, if that would be of any value, because you're going to be president for a year, and then you'll find out that year flies by, and then you might think, well, what do I want to do after that? So I just want to share with you how my path forward. Not that it's relevant to you completely, but it'll give you an idea of how things work in Rotary if that's of interest to you. And I won't spend more than a minute on it. So as it says, I joined Rotary back in 2006. Metro Bethesda Rotary was a breakaway from the Chevy Chase Bethesda Rotary Club. So they were a lunch club and we became a breakfast club. And as I said, I became president of Metro Bethesda in 13-14. Upon completion, I became the area governor for 3 years, and then I became the district governor in 2019-20. Now, you'll find this after you've finished your presidency or after you finish the district governorship. It's a little bit of a lonely world because you're very busy during the year and all of a sudden it gets very quiet as the next person takes over. But you have to figure out what's your path forward. And so in my case, I really wanted to stay international. I was member of the US and Ukraine, as well as the US and Russia, as well as the US and Spain Inter-Country Committee, which are soft diplomacy committees within Rotary, country to country, where you do projects and try to stay below the radar of anything political. I even became the president of the US-Russian Inter-Country Committee a couple of years ago. In 2023 and then again in 2024, I was asked by Dolores Edwards and Nomi Hamid to be the vice governor. And then in 2023, I was also asked to represent our district in what's called the Rotary International Council on Legislation, which is the body in Evanston, Illinois, that puts together all of the rules and policies of Rotary around the world. And that's a kind of a job that helps formulate and vote on the various enactments that are being proposed. And then this year, I was asked by Mandy and the team, the district leadership team, to become the District Rotary Foundation chair. That's a 3-year commitment. It starts in July of this year and goes through 2027. By virtue of just kind of myself, I love to spend Rotary money. There's a lot of it. There's about a $1.4 billion endowment that sits in Evanston, and they spend about between $250 and $300 million a year on projects, both domestic as well as international. And I just think it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to do projects internationally. In my president year, I launched a $100,000 global grant with Russia to renovate a boarding school for visually impaired children, many of whom were orphans. And that was a very interesting project, some success and some failure, but it got done, and in the end, it was a big success. And then since then, I've done lots of projects in Kenya and Ukraine and elsewhere. It's not important per se, but I am an Arch Clump Society member, a major donor. So I'm a real lover of Rotary. I'm a real lover of our district. And I believe in Rotary, and it's just a part of both my life and my family's life. For background of myself, I'm a business guy for 40 years, applying leading edge technology to global corporations in the area of sales and marketing and customer service. And the two areas that we focus on now is artificial intelligence and spatial computing, which is your virtual reality, augmented reality, and extended reality. Okay, that's enough about me, but just the feeling for what can take place after your president year. I would have never known back in 2013-14 when I became president that this is how it would roll out, but it's just one of many trajectories one could use. Okay. Let me spend a few minutes talking about your role as you come up now in navigating the path as club president. As I alluded to at the very outset of this discussion, it's all about you and about leadership. And I was at Strathmore for a wonderful concert on Friday night. They did the Best of Motown, and the conductor was a gentleman, Byron Stripling. I didn't know him before, but he was a wonderful conductor, and he made every one of these songs that much more lively. He was very animated with the orchestra, Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, but equally important with the 3 singers that were singing the Motown songs, working very closely with them to ensure that they started and stopped and paused and everything worked just beautifully. And at the end of the night, the entire Strathmore, which was, I think, sold out everybody was on their feet, rocking and rolling and dancing. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. But it goes back to this gentleman, Byron Stripling, who apparently is a very famous, conductor and works with some of the world's most important soloists and musicians, including Motown artists. So anyhow, for me, your role as the head of your respective club over the next year, starting July 1st, is all about that leadership. It's all about that orchestration of each and every meeting. And in that regard, I like to look at your job. It was the way I looked at my job as well, as you're the orchestra leader. You have lots of players in your club, some of which will, participate in committees, some of which will be helping you with the various events. Some will be speakers, some will be service people, some will give money. There's all kinds of players in your orchestra. But all of them await your guidance for leadership. They want to know, where does you want to take this club during your tenure? And of course, you'll build upon the great successes of the club over the past, but each of you will have an opportunity to put a unique stamp on the club because you'll be running it for a year and you may have some ideas you'd like to try and make the club that much better. So that's the beauty of being the president. You're the orchestra leader each and every week, and you create and craft the most beautiful possible concert that you can do during your breakfast or lunch or evening dinners. So let's go over some of the more specific things that you might do in terms of navigating your path as club president. So the first thing I put down there is that the DG sets the goals for the district. That would be Mandy, and she's kind of laid out just now some of her initial goals. Those will develop as she goes to the what's called International Assembly, where she'll drink the real Kool-Aid with the new president, and she'll come back and maybe modify or enhance some of her thinking. But she has some goals that are emerging. And then you'll want to make sure that you kind of pick up upon some of the goals that Mandy has suggested. It's not necessary to pick up on all of them. That's a personal choice. You can work with Mandy and talk with Mandy. You may want to, adopt literally each one of them. You may want to adopt 2 of the 3 of them. You may want to adopt 1 of the 3 of them. But I think it is important that we have some sort of a linkage between yourself and the district governor's goals so that she can accomplish, in this case, her year, but equally important, you two can accomplish your goals your year. So I think that's very important, and you'll work on that, I'm sure, at CPETS as Mandy goes into much more detail on what are her goals and what that might mean for you. And I'll come back to this later in the presentation when I talk about the strategic plan, because one of the activities and exercises at CPETS is we're going to take the strategic planning process in a very structured way, and it's going to end up in an exercise for you to look at Mandy's goal, well, to look at Rotary's goals, to look at Mario, the president-elect's goals, to look at Mandy's goals, and then to set some goals for yourself and work on action plans to make those happen over the period of your presidency. So that's the importance of kind of linking with Mandy, and I think that's very important. Now, how do you set your own club goals? Well, again, I've already alluded to, you typically want to look at what's happened in the club in the past. You're not on your own. You're a continuation of potentially many, many good years of service by many others. So some of it is going to be by just the way the club is and who you are and the personality, and you continue to keep the boat sailing in a nice way. But some of it also will have your opportunity to do some things that you might want to think are unique and good to the club and wanting to try it. I always believe that the best way to set your club goals is to listen to the members very carefully. And in 2013, I worked with Daniel Fisher, who is a fellow Metro Bethesda Rotarian, but also very well respected in the district for his analytical and survey capabilities. He worked for the Discovery Channel for many, many years as their lead surveyor, and he's outstanding. He's top of the tops. And so fortunately enough, he was in my club, and I said, let's do a survey of our members and let's find out what's important to them. And as I create my goals and stuff, I can use that input from the members to better create my plan. So we put out this survey. We were 29 members at the time. Today we're about 80 members, but at that time we were 29 members. And I read every single one of those surveys, and Daniel did a brilliant job summarizing them and making insights and giving, different kind of interpretations of what people were saying. That survey, by the way, has been administered at my club ever since 2013. It's really how we run our club. And I'll explain in a minute why. But more importantly for you as a president, incoming president, that survey has been somewhat made in a vanilla version so that any club and every club can use that survey to survey your members. And all you got to do is contact my buddy Daniel Fisher at daniel@solvitgroup.com, as you see on the screen, and just tell him Bart said you'd appreciate the club survey that he's willing to offer to you, and he's more than happy to send it to you, and if necessary, he's even probably willing to talk to you about it. But it's really good. And so in my club, it's like a big joke. We have a breakfast club. It's at one of the very important Spanish diners, which is the famous Spanish chef Jose Andres, and the food is really good. But there was a big debate for a long time whether the club really wanted bacon or not bacon, or whether we wanted ratatouille or not ratatouille, and whether we wanted avocado or not avocado. So that became a big deal, and the club survey was crystal clear. They did not want the bacon, they wanted the avocado, and they wanted that ratatouille. So let me tell you, we shelved the bacon and put down the ratatouille, and people were happy in that regard. But in a more serious note, we asked what percentage of our club spend from the foundation as well as from the district and Rotary International did we want to focus on domestic service projects versus global service projects. We asked questions, what would be the right size of the club? So when it was 29, we said, is that the right size? Is 40 the right size? Is 80 the right size? 120 the right size? And that gave us some indication of willingness for people to participate in different events to grow the club or not grow the club. And so I just find that incredibly useful. There were, please, I strongly encourage you to contact my buddy Daniel, get the survey, look it over. You can configure it. I think it's done in SurveyMonkey or something, but he can configure it, or you might just use it as is. And it gives you deep insight into what is on the top of mind for your club and how that might impact your job as president. So that's the second thing I wanted to raise. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing that I mentioned, and that is bringing in strong leaders into your club and the concept of always too deep. Now, too deep is a military concept. It's not mine. And it says whenever you have a leader, you want a leader, and let's just call it a co-leader or a vice leader. And the reason is the leader could get ill, could leave the club, could die, could transfer. Anything can happen to your leaders. And by leaders, I mean your club chairs, for example. And so you want to always have a second person behind that individual to help take over as appropriate, or during the year to assist as appropriate. So for example, you may have a membership chair, but you want to have a co-membership chair or a second, kind of a second in charge. You might have a services project chair. You want to have a second person under the service project to assist in as a co-chair. You might have a membership chair, or you might have a community outreach chair, a public image chair, or whatever you feel is appropriate in your club. Again, I encouraged you to look for strong leaders, because that will make a big difference in your job and being able to delegate and orchestrate with excellence. But equally important, it'll allow you to realize your own vision and that of Mandy and others that you're going to be leveraging. But I think that too deep is an important concept, and any of us that have been in positions of leadership know that the inevitable does happen. Somebody does drop out, something happens. Thank goodness is that second person that's been shadowing the first person or working closely with them, it may even be the case, and can take over without missing a beat. So that's just another kind of piece of advice. Now, I think it's important to take the time to provide leadership and vision for each chair. And what I mean by that is, now this is again just my management style, and remember, I'm just a private sector guy, so I have a certain mentality that I've been trained on over the last 40 years, and it's not always right in all circumstances, but I found it to be reasonably useful. And that is, I sit down, at first I select the members, based hopefully on strong leadership, and I get to know them, and I take them out for, lunch and discuss my vision and the district's vision and Rotary's vision and how they feel about it, and what their time constraints are and all the rest, until I feel comfortable. And you can start to do that, by the way, now in preparation for your July 1st visits, July 1st meetings. But once you've got some fairly clear leaders, now what you want to do is kind of plant the vision for each of the chairs. You know, membership chair, Mandy said that membership is an important component. I'd like to see a 3% increase in membership in during the first period of time, whatever it may be, 12 months, 6 months, whatever you choose. Or outreach, I'd like to see X number of articles or social media posts or whatever is appropriate for public image to be out in the market and we do it every, I don't know, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever is appropriate. And give them that vision and give them some hard metrics that they can deliver against. So I purposely said, for example, in membership, that was an important one. When I was president, we grew the club from 29 people to 40 people. I'm not looking for any accolades. I'm telling you how we did it. We were very, 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 very strict on each and every member that came to visit our club. We followed them up like a hawk. We made sure they were invited back to a service project. We made sure they were invited back for a fun social event in our club. We wanted them to see the club beyond a breakfast with good food and a speaker. And so that it didn't just become grow membership. In my case, it was 5%. I think we did a lot better than that. But grow membership, it was how we were going to do it. And my chair of membership was a wonderful guy, Russell Lacey. You may know him. He and I went on this course about how to grow membership, and it was a wonderful course. And it laid out a plan of action. There were, I don't remember, 5 or 7 steps. And Russell and I, we implemented that for every single person that came into the club as a visitor to the T. And we grew our club from 29 to 40. I completely attribute that to Russell. I completely attribute that to the course structure that we went to. You might ask, do they have that course? I don't think so anymore, but there are many courses that can help you with this, a structured approach to membership. But that's just an example of choosing the right leadership. In this case, Russell, he had a sidekick as well as a second deep, but then giving Russell some hard metrics and joining Russell to that training event and really helping to deliver against our numbers. Okay, next what I want to touch upon briefly is this concept of be prepared for surprises. And I mentioned they will happen. And anybody that's been in a position of responsibility in your club already knows that the inevitable will happen, and it doesn't always happen the way it's supposed to or to your liking. I give one example in my club. It was one of my surprises when I was as president of the club. We were Metro Bethesda. I said we were 29 people at the time, members, and the Friendship Heights Club, which is just down the road in District of Columbia, was at that time kind of folding or dissipating, however you want to call it. And there were several members that were looking for clubs to join. So we held an open forum, and we, quite frankly, we went to their meetings and we invited them to ours. We really pursued them. We got some great members since then. I mean, there's still members today, probably half a dozen. There's some of our leaders in our club today. So it was really a wonderful opportunity. But I'm telling you the story because one of those people has since passed. It's not important. He was a dentist. He was a very honorable Rotarian, really a very nice man, very committed to Rotary, very professional. But he had an issue, and that issue blossomed during my year as president. No training I could have taken it. Pre-pets, C-pets, or any pets would have trained me for this particular event. When we brought these new members in from Friendship Heights, we gave them an opportunity to stand in front of the club and say, hi, this is my name, this is how long I've been a Rotarian, and this is my history of Rotary, and this is why I joined your club. And during this gentleman's session, when he did all this, he said, I joined your club because of all the beautiful women that are in this club. And I couldn't believe what he said. And I said, oh my God, we have probably a big issue here. And long story short, as the year progressed, he was kind of harassing the women in my club and doing things that were just inappropriate. And I got complaints, lots of complaints from the women in the club. So we held this kind of big board meeting in my club and on a Saturday morning, I remember it, and the club was evenly split. This guy has a problem, there's no question, but we're Rotarians, so we should circle this guy and help him out and help do whatever's needed to get him to feel better and not do the things he's doing. That was one side of the club, 50%. The other 50% said, heck no, this is a creep. Get rid of this guy as quickly as possible. He's nothing but trouble. And let me tell you something, I didn't expect this to happen. Nobody expected it to happen. Long story short, to finish the story, the board meeting agreed that would give this gentleman a 90-day notice that he had to kind of clean up his act, and if there was any violations to anything that was, any of the ladies felt uncomfortable, then he would be asked to leave the club. And he was really hurt by this because he was a long-standing Rotarian, and he said, I grew up and he was somewhat older gentleman. I grew up always giving women compliments and da 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 da. So he was kind of justifying his whole position. But long story short, he was so hurt by this club coming together and giving this 90-day notice, he gave resignation 2 weeks later. And so half the people in the club were thrilled to death, and the other half felt we didn't get a chance to give him an ample chance to get better. But that's just one example of being prepared for surprises. They will happen. You won't even imagine what they could be, okay? But they will happen. So all I want to say is, you can have your visions and your goals and delegate and work closely and have fun and orchestrate. Leave 20% of your time for the unknown. It's just going to happen, and sometimes it's a good surprise, sometimes not a good surprise, right? The good surprise was this club is folding. Let's get them to come into Metro Bethesda, Friendship Heights. That was great, good piece of news. The other one was this gentleman who was not such a good piece of news. Okay, the next bullet talks about building consensus. So again, I'm a great believer in delegation and laying out very clear goals for each person that is responsible for implementing part of the project, and giving them metrics and measuring them against the metrics on a quarterly basis. And I think that's, at least from my perspective, a good leadership style. And so that's kind of what I implemented. But it's not just me and the chairs. We all know, and you all know, because you've been members of your club, and maybe some of you already been presidents and you've been chairs of different things in your club. Each club has a personality. Each club has its own character. As district governor, Mandy will find this out. Nomi, he's finding it out. I certainly found it out. There's many different personalities within the district, and it's wonderful to be able to see all these personalities. But what I know is the clubs that are really excelling in whatever is important to them, whether it's membership or social or, service project or whatever, there's a certain consensus in the club. There's a certain feeling of wanting to be together, wanting to do things together, a certain consensus of the we versus the I. And I invite any of you to my Metro Bethesda Rotary Club. I really think we have that consensus. We have a very exciting and dynamic club, and you can feel it from the moment you come in to the moment you leave. And so I think that somehow as an orchestra leader, not only are you building strong leaders and delegating effectively, always too deep, and giving the vision and putting out the various follow-up on the metric side, but you're trying to build consensus across the club. And that's part of the orchestra leader. Think about it. When an orchestra plays beautiful music, it's the entire orchestra that plays well. It's not any one, celloist or violinist or bassoonist. It's they all play well together. And that's the building consensus. How do you do it? Lots of time spent with your members, lots of care and love to your members, lots of showing concern and addressing issues as they come up. In my case, I thought it was very important to give out awards. They were paper awards. They were from Russell Hampton, and they had about, a half a dozen different awards, and one was for, Rotarian of the Week, and one was for Outstanding Job in a Service Project, and one was for, Best Membership or whatever, and I would give those out pretty much weekly during the meetings, and everybody that got them obviously felt very good. And then, to my greatest surprise, I was pretty close with some of the people in my club that were, I was working with. I would go to their office to have a meeting, and sitting in the back behind them was that plaque. That, not a plaque, it was a paper, but they had maybe put it in some sort of a glass, thing. And it was amazing how much that really meant to them. And that, so you just kind of learn of how to build that consensus and how to build it through, your own ability to gel the club across different types of Rotarians. Okay. The next one talks about what I think is a very critical component of navigating your path as a club president, and that is keeping people involved. It's called engagement. And typically, although not always, that's through service projects. Some people join Rotary just to give, and that's really not a service project. They feel involved when they give money and they see projects being implemented. And there's plenty, seriously, there's plenty of people that fall into that category, maybe more of the older members, but still. But there are many who join because of service and stay members because of service, because they feel they're being engaged with the community. because they feel they're being engaged with their fellow Rotarians, because they feel they're being engaged with an ability to make an impact either on the domestic and or global scale. And so I think that's very important. And one of the ways to keep people engaged in these service projects is to ask them to join the projects. So in my club, we have, I don't know, 2 to 4 service projects going on at any one moment in time. And every week we spend 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting on updates on the service projects. And inevitably, the head of that project will say, you know, I'm too short for feeding Bethesda on Saturday. Can anybody really just give us a break here and help out? And it always happens. 2 people step up and we address that issue. So getting people involved, keeping them involved, asking them to be involved, and then obviously, you know, building that consensus through the camaraderie at these types of service projects. Okay, just 2 more. I said I think it's very important that you offer, therefore, as many service opportunities in the club and at the district level. I will tell you that in my club, I think it would be fair to say, I don't know, maybe 60% of our projects succeed. Maybe it's a little higher, but 30 or 40 fail. Just outright, we have a great idea, we have enthusiasm at the beginning, and then for whatever reason, the next thing comes along and people lose interest, and that initiative, that service opportunity quiets down. But we have ongoing service opportunities as well that are going on for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, as many of your clubs do. And so I think that by offering more service opportunities, trying them, you know, being a little bit bold as a president and encouraging new service ideas, as however wild and crazy they may be, that's the way to really, again, grow the club, grow the engagement, build the consensus, and orchestrate a great concert. And I'll just give you one example to back that up. So my club began something called the Purple Tee. It's a golf tournament that runs, or it used to run in the fall, now it runs in the spring. Or it used to run in the spring and now it runs in the fall. That was our sole source of fundraising. And we raise a reasonable sum of money, about $35,000 a year. Half of it goes to our foundation and half of it goes to 3 organizations that we think are worthy of giving our money to, in the military. They're military-related causes. And so that was our primary fundraiser. But I went up to Frederick one day as just a visitor, because I'd heard about this Oktoberfest that they have. And I know there's some people on the call that might be from Frederick, and they could vouch for the fact that this is a fantastic event. And it raises between $120,000 and $150,000 every year. Now, it gets split up between a few clubs, but still, it's an outrageous event where the entire community comes together to the fairgrounds in Frederick, drinks a lot of beer and goes to lots of booths and has lots of fun and listens to lots of music. It's a tremendous success. And I came back to my club and said, listen, we got to do something like this. And there's a kind of an expression, it's an event that has strollers as in children's strollers. And you see, the Purple Tee golf tournament was really mostly adults playing golf. But the Frederick event was mostly people having fun with their families, including strollers. So I said, we could have this event. And so we came up with something called Move Fest, MOVE, Move Fest. And we're in our 3rd year now. And seriously, it's hard to get a new fundraiser started, but we're doing really well right now. So we're kind of excited. It's in the spring this year. I think it's in May. But that's just an example of offering new service opportunities. We tried to do something, by the way, with Halloween as a Halloween fundraiser with strollers and mums and dads. That failed miserably. I mean, I don't even think we broke even. So you just got to try and innovate and, kind of live what you think is right. Okay, last one. Keeping people motivated. So I just make the observation, and it's nothing new because you know this as well. We all are volunteers. Nobody's being paid in this district. There's one paid position, but nobody's being paid really in a leadership position. And so we're all volunteers. Now that's a special person, because they're giving their time to Rotary, whereas they could give their time to their local church or synagogue or mosque. They could give their time to a cause that they believe in. There's many different things they could give their time to, but they've chosen to give it to Rotary. And it's my belief that you need to keep those people motivated by rewarding them and engaging them in a way that's a little different than an organization where you may be the manager and there are people that report to you and and they're being paid and there's a financial incentive and a pecking order and, people respect in the military, the various levels of authority. None of that really exists in Rotary. So it's your task, and it's a hard one. It's very hard to keep people motivated, and doing that through rewards, I think, is a big way to help in a voluntary organization. I mentioned the plaques, but there are other different awards. Just calling people out on a weekly basis, or thanking people, or writing an article in your local, well, as Chris kind of alluded to, a weekly video if you do it, or we have a weekly newsletter, and we get, President calls out people and praise, and it all helps keep people happy, keep people feeling a part of it. And we know, even through the survey, remember I went back to the survey, we know, for example, this year our rate of like 5, are you happy with the club as it stands today? And our scale is 1 to 5. Typically we have like a 4.8 or something like that, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, really high. We have really happy members. But this year it was at 4.3. So Daniel gave me a call and he said, "Hey, Bart, let's have a lunch," which we often do. And he said, "Something's not right. Something's not right." And so we dug through the questionnaires and the surveys and we looked, and Daniel does this brilliant cross analysis. And he came up with some ideas, and we've been implementing those recently, and I think they might be working. So we have a club that's kind of unique. We are 56% women and 44% guys. And that's unique. And one of the complaints we were starting to see, we weren't sure it was a complaint, but something emerging was some of the guys were saying, this club's changed a lot. It's, maybe not the right club for me. And we're thinking, well, why? So we went back out and we interviewed them. Yeah, well, it doesn't really have the guy component to it. So one of the things we've been doing is we have more events for like going to the Rockville Car Show and going to a whiskey night together, and hopefully that will help address some of the challenges that we found in the survey and keep them motivated. But we know from Rotary, both at the club level, at the district level, and for that matter globally, because I've worked on the global membership side, that when people are not motivated and don't feel like they've been engaged and don't feel like they're being loved and cared for and praised and acknowledged, that they leave Rotary. It's a big deal to leave Rotary. So I leave you with that last one. Do your best to keep the club members motivated. I think rewards are a big way. There's no one right way to do an award. There's no wrong way to do it. Figure out what works within your club culture and try your best to implement it. And with that, Chris, I wanted to kind of end it. I'm happy to take any questions, or I can give them back 7 minutes.
All right, Barton, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm going to see if there's any question. We can take 1 or 2. If not, we're going to do some quick introduction here. So thank you very much. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll pause for a second. And if you haven't gotten enough of Barton, you're going to get a little bit more of him later when we talk about budgeting as well. So, okay, well, great. Well, thank you with the remaining 6 minutes. What I'd like to do
Can I raise a
is kind of,
question, please?
oh,
May I raise
we have a question? Sure.
Yes, I do. This is for Barton. Barton, thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
Would you kindly put in the chat your email address?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, well, what I'd like to do now is give us a chance to see who's in the room. And I'm going to go through our president-elect first and go in alphabetical order according to the registration list. So I'm giving you a heads up in kind of what order you're going to come in. And when I call your name, if you just let us know very briefly what you do, your career, what club you're with, and how long you've been in Rotary. And if you've been a president before and you're coming around for a second term, let us know that as well. So just a little bit about yourself, your club, how long you've been in Rotary. So let's start with Vimla. And if you want to turn your camera on so we can see it, that would be great.
Okay, I let's see. Have a video. You can. Okay,
That's fine.
so yeah, even if you don't see me. So my name is Vimla. Right now I'm in India, so I'm coming from there with some, on somebody else's computer. So not very familiar with that. By profession, I'm a physician. I'm a retired radiologist. I live in Potomac, and I joined Potomac Rotary in 2023. Fairly new with the group. Our group was, the time I joined, our group was going through some uh, what do you say, some trouble. So group kind of reorganized itself. Right now we are 17 members. It's a little small group, but very motivated members are remaining in our group. So I'm very
Yeah, well,
happy to be
that's
part
great.
of that.
Yeah, thank you
We are
very
trying
much.
to Okay.
Vimla, let's keep it just to the basics. We have a lot of people to go through, but you'll have some more time to chat with each other later
Sure,
as well. So David Burrows, you're next.
Yes. Hello. How you can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is me, Dave Burrows, Rotary Club of Fredericktown. We're a small, struggling, but very active club. And I'm glad to meet you all tonight. I hope to see you all at CPETS. I will be there.
How long have you been in Rotary?
I've been in the club for 5 years. I've been president for 6 months now, and looking forward to I'm actually going to be president 2 years in a row.
Great. Thank you. I've been there. Thank you. Patricia Hanbury.
Hi, Pat Hanbury. I am with the Key City Rotary Club in Frederick. We are 3 years old and have almost 130 members. So we are every time we come out with, we're going to have a training about growing your membership. I'm saying, no, we have enough. We just maybe need to cap it a little bit. I am a rule of 85. I'm retired. I used to be the CEO of the Mental Health Association here in Frederick. And since I'm only 40 and I'm rule of 85, you can tell how long I've been in Rotary.
Excellent, Pat. Thank you very much.
Kidding about the 40.
Marilyn Herbert.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Herbert. I'm with the Rotary Club of Newmarket. I've been part of the club for about 2.5 years. Professionally, I work for the Alzheimer's Association in development and event planning all over the state, but managing the walk in Frederick and the walk in Harford and Cecil County. I've been in Newmarket, Maryland for over 30 years and Lake Linganore, but lifelong greater DC area resident.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. Sharon Jaco.
Yes, hello, Sharon Jacko. I've been in the club since 2009 at Rotary Club of Carroll Creek, associated with that famous Oktoberfest. And you all got to come up and visit us this year in October. I am a retired Marine. I think that's it.
Oh, great. Thank you, Sharon. Next is Rebecca Jessup.
Hello, all. My profession is I'm an arts consultant, so I'm helping to build an arts center in Havre de Grace in Harford County. I've been in Rotary for about 6 years. I'm the first-time president of Southern Harford County Rotary. We're small, but we're fun. That's one of the big things. We are fun.
Great. Thank you very much. James King. I saw you earlier.
Here we go. Hi, I'm James King. I'm the current president of the Glen Burnie Club. Been in Rotary for almost 2.5 years. I'm a defense contractor by trade, and that's about it.
Okay, Priscilla Kinnear.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Kinnear. I am the current president of the Rotary Club of Gaithersburg. This is my 3rd time, so the next year will be my 4th term as a president. I'm a retired lawyer, and I'm sorry I can't show you my photograph. It's midnight, almost midnight out here, and I'm in bed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. Let's see. Michael Nagdi, are you a president-elect as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Michael, I'm with the Rotary Club of Lakeshore Seminole Park. I'm currently the assistant governor of Area 11. but I'm also the incoming president for our club. I'm a retired systems analyst from Computer Science Corporation.
Okay, thank you. And Alexander Necker?
Alex Necker. I am with the Rotary Club of Bel Air. I've been in Rotary since 2022. I'm the president-elect, and I am a real estate agent.
Thank you. Linda Ostrovitz?
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Ostovitz. I'm an attorney with Offit Kerman. I'm going into my 44th year of practice. I am with the Rotary Club of Columbia Patuxent, which I have been with, I believe, almost 10 years now. I am a prior president of that club, and I'm looking forward to returning to that role in July.
Thank you, Linda. Next, we have Rachel Schaefer.
Hi, I'm Rachel Schaffer. I am with the Rotary Club of Catonsville. I'm president-elect. I've been with them since 2021, and my background is healthcare and HR, although I'm currently a stay-at-home mom.
Okay, thank you. Patricia Sheik.
Can you hear me? Good
Yes.
morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Shake, and I'm with the Rotary Club of Capitol Hill. I've been with them since 2021, and I'm a retired agricultural trade and development expert.
Okay. Next, we have Stuart Silverman.
Good evening. I am a member of the Potomac Bethesda Rotary Club. I've been a member there for about 4 years. I'm originally from Philadelphia, although I currently reside and have been in the Washington, D.C. area for over 40 years. I currently reside in Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay, thank you. And we have Jeff Thomas.
Good evening. I have been with the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rotary for about 3 years. And before that, I was with the Alexandria Rotary for another 3 or 4 years. I'm a district director for the Boy Scouts, and I manage most of Montgomery County.
Thank you, Jeff. Robin Tomechko.
Hi, I'm Robin Tomechko. I'm a member of the Aberdeen Rotary Club in Harford County. I'm the president-elect, and professionally, I'm a nonprofit CEO for an organization called Harford Family House.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Seth Fallu.
Hi there, I'm Seth Valleau. I am a facility transportation director for Springdale Center, and been in Rotary for about 6 years at the Rotary Club of Charles County in the Plata.
Thank you, Seth. And last but not least, Sue Emmer.
Hello, friends. Sue Weber with the Rotary Club of Annapolis. I've been a member since 2011, so that adds up to 14 years. I've worn almost every hat possible. Professionally, I'm a residential realtor and a local artist, and this will be my second time being president.
Thank you very much, Sue. Okay, great. Well, our next speaker, so we have a break programmed right now. I'm going to take about 1 or 2 minutes of that back. So let's plan on being back here at after 4 minutes. So at 6:58, and I'll put that. So if you need to refresh a beverage or refresh yourself for a second, go ahead. And our next speaker on the agenda is Laurie Rubin, who is going to talk about effective communication techniques. we actually got through a big chunk of those introductions earlier. And if we get another break, I'll introduce the area governors and assistant governors and other members who are with us today. But I do want to keep on schedule. Welcome, Dolores. I see you joined us.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, having some technology issues here. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all.
No worries. Thanks for coming. We're on a break here. They have about 1 more minute before we come back, and then Laurie Rubin's on.
Hi, Dolores. Hi, Alicia.
Doris, I met your cousin the other night at an event.
Oh, my cousin Cynthia.
I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, but it was an economic development event. We're talking about Rotary.
Wonderful.
Said, oh, do you know my cousin Dolores?
Yeah, that's probably her. Oh, it's good. It's
Small
good to see you.
world.
It is very small.
She was a delight, even though I don't remember her name. I'm
That's
sorry
okay.
about that. But we both remembered your name. That's what matters.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. It's good to see you. Happy New Year to all of you all. It's
Good to
good to
see
see
you.
so many faces.
Hi, Dolores. Tell James I still have his application.
Oh, he's here. He's here. Did you hear him? That's Dave. He
I
said,
haven't seen him in
okay.
a while, so I had to get that out there. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Dave. He laughs at you. He says it all the time.
Yep.
Well, it's 6:58, and as I promised, I want to keep us on track here. So I hope everybody's back. If not, you will be. Our next speaker is Laurie Rubin. She's with the Rotary Club of Columbia Town Center, and she's going to talk about a very important topic. It's communication. And Martin was talking a lot about leadership and managing club members, but at the core of everything is how your club communicates with one another. And there's a science to it. It's not just listening and doing and stuff. So she's going to be talking to us about that. So with no further ado, Laurie, why don't you come on up and feel free to share your slides as you see fit. Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now let me get to where I can see it and we'll be good. Here we go. That's right.
There you go.
Okay. So this is a quote from George Bernard Shaw, famous playwright and author. And I just want to see in the chat box, what's your reaction to this? Agree, disagree, find it funny, find it sad? So some mixed responses. Chris introduced me. I'm with the Rotary Club of Columbia Town Center. Next month, like day after tomorrow, I will be in the month of celebrating my 15th anniversary as a Rotarian. So celebrating that, quite happy about it. And professionally, I work in the area of leadership development, executive coaching, facilitating meetings, some training, etc. And this model that I wanted to share with you, I have found to be incredibly helpful for diverse groups, which is what you all will be leading in the coming months. So it comes out of the research work of Otto Scharmer, who is the author of a book called Theory U, which is all about how do we flip our thinking? How do we get unstuck from our habits of thought? And one of the things that we think about when we're thinking about communicating people is that communicating has two components, speaking and listening. But it actually has a deeper level, several deeper levels than that. So this model shows the fields of conversation that Otto and his researchers have come up with over the last 15 or 20 years. And it has, like I said, been very helpful to me. So you'll notice the bottom left box starts with the number 1. When we go into conversations, when we step into a meeting, when we hop on a Zoom screen, we generally start in the polite phase. So, hi, how are you? I'm well. How are you? I'm doing very well. I was looking forward to seeing you today because as we, especially in a group, as we start to combine our thoughts and our politeness, we generally tend to move toward debate, toward clash. They've termed it breakdown. Some people are concerned about breakdown because breakdown sounds like a bad thing, but we're really just trying to break down the barriers that we've set up around being polite and courteous. The challenge with breakdown is that we have been taught that debate and that clash and having a different opinion is being negative, being contrary, not going along with the group, not being a good team player. And so what we often see is as a group moves into that breakdown space, someone in the group will get anxious or nervous or even upset, and they will move the group back to 1. So we're back at courteous compliance. So you'll know that that's what's happening when you hear things like, well, just tell me what you want and I'll go along with it. So that's courteous compliance. I don't have a strong opinion about this. I'm gonna let majority vote. Now, that sounds great, right? But look at the bottom of the whole slide. When we are in 1 and 2, we are reenacting current reality over and over and over again. So it's really difficult to get the lift up to 3, which is thinking together. That's when we start to honor the opinions of others, when we get curious about what they are thinking, where their idea might have come from, how they might see it playing out. And it requires that we introduce both inquiry and curiosity. And this is where you as a leader can break that cycle of breakdown to courteous compliance, to breakdown to courteous compliance, that stuck communication pattern. So asking questions, inquiring, or being curious, or asking for a question and being specific about it. So not so much anybody have any questions, but questions like, how could this go wrong? Or what do you think the long-term potential for this is? So being thoughtful about your questions and keeping the conversation rolling is what will get your teams into box number 4, which is a moment in time. It is the moment in time when we co-create. And that is called generative dialogue. So have you ever been in a meeting and you come out of that meeting and you say, wow, that was really fun, and we came up with a great idea. And somebody you're talking to says, oh, who came up with that idea? And the answer is, we did. I don't know who actually thought of it. It was truly a collaboration. Those moments in time are when we are creating a new future, the future that is always wanting to emerge for us. And we tend to kind of dampen it down because it's scary. It's scary to go into that breakdown space. But if you, as the leader of these conversations, even if all you do with this model is be aware of it, when you're watching the conversations unfold in front of you, but especially when you're watching the conversations that are perhaps charged, emotionally charged, or largely different opinions. The breakdown is not a place to try to fix in terms of shutting it down. It is a place to offer elevation, lift the conversation up into thinking together with that inquiry and that curiosity. So our brains are hardwired basically to avoid conflict. And we've learned that that's what we're supposed to do. If you can start to shift your thinking to the idea that conflict is energy, people have to care enough about an issue to be willing to state an opposing opinion, because we've been taught that you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to take your group into debate and clash. You're supposed to courteously comply. And that works for some things. If you're trying to decide what color the shirts are that you all want to wear to the international convention, courteous compliance works great. If you're trying to solve a real dilemma in your club, Barton talked about the one where there was a new club member who was not behaving appropriately, according to some, but perfectly appropriately to others. That's the kind of conversation where you might want to try to get people to be thinking together, as opposed to what happens. One of the big negatives of reenacting current reality is that if we're either being courteous or we're clashing, there are winners and losers. And so the way we break that dynamic is to get everyone thinking together, ask questions, ask the provocative questions that bring out what people are thinking, and help them hang in there through the breakdown. So I call the breakdown the fire swamp. Any Princess Bride fans in the group, you know that in the fire swamp, there was one way to get out of the fire swamp. Mandy, what was it? You're on mute, but I'll tell it for you. You have to go through it.
You have to kill one of the, no, that was, yes.
Yes, you did have to kill the rodents of unusual size.
Yes, ROUSs.
Yeah, that's right. But you could only get to the other side of the fire swamp by going through it. We cannot go from courteous compliance to generative dialogue. We will stay in courteous compliance, and all potential ideas will die because they're not being nurtured and shared and valued. The idea that might come out of somebody's mouth might not be the perfect idea, but we never know when it's going to maybe spark something for someone else. So we might be thinking, well, that's kind of a dumb thing to say, but the person next to us might be going, oh, that makes me think of this other thing that we can now build on. So the reason I wanted to share this with you, the reason we thought it might be helpful is, as the leaders of these many conversations that you're going to have, just being aware of this pattern, this potential pattern, and it plays out very, very, very often. Like I said, not when you're talking about the color of t-shirts, but as soon as you start to get to something that has some teeth to it, something that has a little bit of emotion behind it, you will see this pattern. And if all you do with this information is become aware of that and be the person who can hang in through breakdown without getting angry, without getting frustrated, without shutting people down, but inviting further conversation around it, you will have much more successful outcomes. And because the group thought together, there will not be winners and losers. Everyone will come away feeling like they participated and that they were a part of the solution. And do I see a hand? Is that Stuart? Can you unmute? Stuart, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm following what you're saying, and it's important, of course, where you have people with different ideas and they may clash. And as the leader of that group, you want to lift the conversation up to a higher level, is what I'm hearing you say, so that people can start thinking together in a constructive way. So when you see that clash, and the leader's job is to lift that conversation up to a higher level, what should the leader say? What are the words that the leader should say?
I wish I had a list for you. But like Barton said, you're gonna need to be prepared. One of the easiest things to do is to make an observation and say something like, it sounds like we have some of the folks in our group think that our fundraiser should be in November, and some of the folks think that it should be in December. So let's hear from a couple of you. What are the advantages to November? And you keep that conversation going. What often happens, and it's beautiful when this happens, is that somebody on the December group will go, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I think I'm going to change my vote, and I think maybe we should go with December. So giving people the opportunity to process that through, giving credence to the idea that the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Have you ever gone to a meeting and had what you thought was consensus, and then later you've heard that somebody else thought a completely different outcome came from that meeting? It happens.
Is it important to strive to reach for consensus, or do you simply recognize as the leader, because of the group, you'll have difficulty reaching consensus, but that's okay as long as everyone has had an opportunity to speak?
Exactly. And it depends on the situation. So consensus is sometimes exactly what you want if the stakes are high around the issue. Let's say the stakes are, we're thinking about branching off a new club. You would want consensus around that, probably. But if the stakes are around whether the fundraiser's in November or December, you might be happy with majority rules. I don't tend to use majority rules because majority rules creates winners and losers. And majority rules decisions are often not durable. So you'll make a majority rules decision, something will pass by a vote or two, and the next month you'll come to your board meeting and the topic comes up again. That's because the people who lost in the decision didn't get closure or didn't get satisfaction, didn't feel heard, didn't understand what the advantages were to the decision that was made. And it sounds like as I'm saying this, it sounds like, oh my goodness, my meetings are going to take 5 hours. Once you kind of get the hang of this, your meetings will go much more quickly and your decisions will stick, and you won't have meetings where you just have the same conversation, the Groundhog Day kind of thing. Making sure people feel heard, making sure that anybody who has an objection is honored and listened to and has the ability to present their own position. That takes a few minutes, and it's worth it because down the road, it's going to have other repercussions. If what you've done is you've moved to a vote and only, half of the people in the room are ready for that.
Well, I'm sorry, I need to, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Let's suppose you're talking about a fundraising event. You're trying to choose a fundraising event for a particular time of year. That's a pretty important decision. And so there's lots to talk about. First, you have to talk about what the fundraising event is, and then that's the goal. And then what's the plan to put that in place in terms of financing, budgets, who you reach out to in the community, how you advertise it, and so forth and so on. So the fundamental issue is, should we have a fundraising event this time of year, and what should it be? It may very well be you're not going to be able to reach consensus. And so being the leader of the group, I suspect you have to be fairly observant to see how strong the objections are to the proposed project. And so you have to make a decision. Do you go ahead with the project even though you hear some people strongly object to it, although there are others in the group that will favor it? So as the leader, do you simply push it through and approve it, or do you make the decision this should be revisited another time?
That's so what you're laying out for us is probably several meetings. The first one being, do we want to have a fundraiser? And can we get enough support for this decision that will have support for the event? So if you really want the fundraiser, but you and one other board member are the only people that do, think about how tough it's going to be to get support for that fundraiser. So it's going to depend on the context, the circumstances. That's why there's not just a list of the kinds of questions you can ask. But the point of this is to click up, kind of level up your own awareness of what's going on in the conversation. So what we do naturally is we get caught up in the content of the conversation. How do we feel about this issue? Do we want this fundraiser? Do we not want this fundraiser? Do we want it in November? Do we not want it in November? Those are all important factors, but leveling your own leadership communication and your own listening up a level to see what kind of advocacy do you have for this in the room, and what kind of objections do you have? If the objections are silence, I would ask a question about how might it go wrong? How might something, fail in this particular context? Because what you want to do is you want to make a decision. Ideally, this is an ideal situation. You want to make a decision that everyone can live with and support. It might not be what they would have voted for, but the conversation is as important as the outcome if you're wanting people to support your leadership vision, your ideals, Rotary's ideals. The more you can build that, the more your club will thrive, and the more people will feel like they want to be engaged in those kinds of conversations and those decisions. Anybody have I think I have like 5 more minutes. Anybody have a situation that they'd like to kind of walk through this with, something that you're working on as a board? We had a conversation on Saturday at the live event at our table of someone who was having a specific situation that she felt like this was really going to help her resolve it. Anybody have one of those? That's good. You guys have great years to look ahead to if you don't have any of those kinds of challenges for you. How about Marilyn?
Yeah, first, I affirm what you're sharing in that sometimes we plow ahead quickly and assume agreement. And oftentimes with busy people, which our board and our members are all, busy, everybody kind of wants to keep things rolling. But sometimes that comes back and bites everybody because there's a lot assumed because someone didn't like really, stand up and say absolutely not. So I find one of the challenges looking forward, and we initiated a survey just related to our social events and certain, things that we do as outreach. And that was helpful, but we have several events that we've done since the club formed, and we're a relatively new club, but there is a bit of an assumption that we're going to always do certain things every year. And so that's one of the things that I'm considering broaching. And like, do we need to assess, like, or is this something that is non-negotiable? Everybody wants to do, forever.
Exactly. And what I would say to that is be aware, not beware, be aware of the silence. Very often the silent people are living in the courteous compliance box. They've got other things they'd like to say. They'd like to offer other perspectives, but the norm in the group says the person who has the floor is speaking and they get to speak until we move to a vote. And so that's where you end up with conflict that you just didn't need. I mean, it's so easy to prevent. We talk a lot about conflict resolution. I prefer conflict prevention. Then you don't have to resolve anything. Yeah.
Well, Laurie, thank you very much for your time in the presentation. And it really is something that you can consciously use when you are having one of those discussions in your club about a serious topic, to say, hey, this conflict, this discussion, this disagreement is actually a good thing because it's progressing the decision-making along. And now that you have a roadmap of where to go towards inquiry and curiosity to generative dialogue to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, curiosity is one of your best leadership tools.
Super. Well, thank you very much. Again, everybody can give a virtual round of applause to Laurie. There's an icon under your reaction where you can do that. So the next thing, so I'm going to go over my Rotary, and let me share my screen here. I can take that over.
Okay.
So yeah, that's fine. And we're going to go over some My Rotary stuff. And I put a link in the chat. Now, if you have two monitors, that's great. You can look at me and look at the slides I'm sharing on one. And you can open up your other monitor and put My Rotary on there. I want you to try to click that anyway. If you don't have two monitors, what I want you to do is click on that link and log into My Rotary. And then I'm going to kind of talk through a couple aspects of what I'm looking at, and I want you to try to follow along. So it's important to, get the practice on this, be able to log in. Now, if we're at the roadblock where you can't log into My Rotary, get with me afterwards, send me a text message. We'll fix that offline so we're not taking up everybody else's time. Let me just make my other screen here a little bit larger so I can see exactly what I'm sharing. So when you go to My Rotary, you'll get a little sign-in link, and it looks like that. And I'm going to actually share my screen here, so you'll see exactly what it looks like. So it's my.rotary.org, and there's a sign-in up there. And if you've been in it before and you authorize your browser to save your password, it makes it real easy. If you're concerned about that, just remember your password, you retype it in. There is a little remember me button that you can click on that. And if you don't know your password, if you need help, there's always a little note that says need help signing in. And I think if you click on that, you'll be given the opportunity to reset your password or look it up or what. And it should be normally the email address associated with your Rotary account. So You click in. Now, this site is notoriously slow in terms of, so that you will get very familiar with that little spinning wheel, and that's normal. I would say normal. It's not unusual when that happens, and it's not the end of the world that it comes up. So, a couple things that I wanted to point out, and I'm going to flip back and forth on the slide a little bit. At the very top right, you have a My Account button, and the My Account is up here, and there's a lot of good information if you just want to know about your status in Rotary. And if I click on my profile, you look at mine. Hopefully this won't affect the recording, because sometimes Google doesn't like when you see PII, but I could edit it out if needed. I see my email address, primary, alternate email, Rotary resume is in there. Let me blow this up a little bit. My history with other Rotary clubs is in there, giving status to very detailed degree here. Paul Harris Fellows, etc., and sponsored members is all in there. So if you ever needed to go back and figure out what members did I sponsor, I'm a youth exchange alum from 1985 when I was an exchange student, and there's some personal equipment, personal experience. Now you can edit this as well, and this becomes part of your profile. So all that is information under my profile. Now you have more information under my account. You can see your donations, your account actions, and account settings. I'm not going to go into all those in depth, but just to know that they're there. Now, the next thing that I wanted to show is the ribbon bar, and there's a lot of information at the top of this ribbon bar. And so before I go on here, just so far so good. Are there any questions? And you can unmute, ask, raise your hand if you want to. Just want to make sure everybody's with me, and I'm not going to go too fast. And we have until 7:45, and then tomorrow I'm going to continue with the Rotary Club Central. So we'll be back on computer stuff. But and as a club president, some of you might, especially those of you with 200-member clubs, might say, well, I don't need to get in that. My secretary does that, or my executive secretary does all that stuff. But as a club president, you'll still want to know how to get in. And there are certain things you can do as club president that other people can't. So when you're in this bar, there's a lot of stuff under the bar. And so if you click under the My Rotary bar, you have club access. And some of you, if you are a president-elect, you may not have all the bells and whistles. I normally don't. I'm my club's foundation chair. I'm the district trainer. But the only people who have access to managing the club are the club president, I think the secretary, the vice president. So if you're also a vice president, you may have access to stuff. Or you can get your role delegated to. And there's something I'll show you here in a little bit about how to have privileges delegated. For the purposes of this demo, I actually had my club president delegate privileges to me temporarily. So I should be able to show you what a club president will be able to see. So I'm going to go into the Charles County Rotary Club here, and there are some tabs again at the top. Load that up a little bit. Club details. So the details about when the club was chartered, club ID number, contact information, need to update that phone number, it's changed. And then the club officers are all listed here. Now you can edit those, I think on the next screen, but where the club meets. And this information is actually taken through Rotary International. So this information here is what you would get on the app when you go to the where clubs meet. And I don't know about you, but I've been visiting other cities from time to time, and I go on the app and I find out what Rotary Club is meeting for lunch on a Tuesday, and they're not there. Yeah, that means they're not keeping this up to date. So that's a little pet peeve of mine.
Hey, Craig.
Now the next, yep, go ahead.
I'm looking at some of the information on our club and it's incorrect and I don't seem to have the privilege to edit it. Who do I go?
Yeah, it's probably going to be your president, secretary, vice president.
I am the president.
Oh, okay. So what information is incorrect?
Well, the club officers is wrong. It has somebody hasn't been president for a while and there is president.
Okay.
And
I
so
think that might be something we can change on the next tab over. So
okay.
But let's see if we can get to that. If not, let me know and we can work on it offline, maybe tomorrow or at a later date.
Sounds good.
When you click on the members tab here, then you have some additional information about managing members. And so you can see at all the club members, actually it gives you their start date, which is kind of nice too, and contact information. And if I go to the ellipsis to the right of that member, you can assign a club officer role. And so that's one of the ways you can manage your club officers. You can also click on add a member. Now, this is DACDB and MyRotary don't always talk that well with one another. They're supposed to, and they do in certain ways. And if you put in a new member in DACDB, it's supposed to have that information flow to MyRotary. And it will eventually, but it doesn't do very quickly. So I think the recommended thing to do is you can put it in DACDB, but you should also put it in MyRotary. And a lot of people say put it in MyRotary first as an active member, because what that does will assign a Rotary ID number. And then you can go to DACDB and use the same ID number. Because if you don't do that, and you just put a new member in DACDB without an ID number, you also put them in MyRotary, you'll end up with two unique ID numbers and you'll have two basically members with the same name, and you'll have to terminate one of them. And that just gets messy. Then you have a terminated member who's a member who's never really been terminated. So that's an important thing to remember when you're managing your members. You can search your members. So if I were to search for the first letters of my last name, you're going to end up with me down here, and you can see as club foundation chair, etc. And let's see if I
Excuse
can
me, Chris,
go ahead.
this is a really basic question. I feel like I should know the answer, but what is the difference between DACDB and MyRotary?
Good question. That's I mean, it's fundamental that we all understand that. So MyRotary is Rotary International's database of membership. And that's really the source. What we're looking at is what every Rotarian has access to for their membership information. Now, DACDB is a private third-party company that provides membership management services for Rotary. And our district subscribes, our clubs use it, but not all clubs do. You'll find entire districts and zones that use Club Runner. And outside the US, there are other databases that are not DACDB that clubs use to manage their membership. So it's a complete third-party application that does make a lot of stuff really simple, and it does a lot more in terms of event registration and management. So it does a lot more, but it's not officially Rotary's. This is officially Rotary's. Michael, your hand's up.
Yes, one thing I wanted to mention also when you were talking about putting the data first at the MyRotary and then putting it in DACDB is that if you just go after putting it in MyRotary, which is like you said, the ID would be filled in and so forth, then go to MyRotary and run a compare, it would have a side-by-side data check, and you will see that there is a new member on the right side or left side, and then one's in the MyRotary, but it's not in DACDB, and there's an arrow that you could then pull it up, and it will pull all the data from.
I think I'm going to
MyRotary.
do a separate program on DACDB at a different time because it warrants more than half an hour to go into depth, and I'm going to do that virtually and probably after CPETs, so everybody gets the same
Yeah.
So just real quick to keep on, because I do want to get through a lot of this stuff so we can get to goals tomorrow. If you got to select a role, and if I were to be assigned something, I can be assigned as club executive secretary, learning facilitator, public image chair, etc. So there are all these other options here. And if you select the year, then you can, oh, there's even vice president and young leaders. So there are different options. I guess these are the ones that are unassigned for the next year. So anyway, that's under the members tab. And then there's a finance tab. And I think I have some information about, since I'm the foundation chair as well. And you can see the club invoice. You can get this through DACDB, I believe, as well. No, you can't. So the club invoice basically is, you have these access. So this is what Rotary International charges. And look, you got a whole history of club invoices. And I guess that's due because we're supposed to pay that soon. And that information is there. And now why did it take me away from that good looking page that has all the good links on it? And then you can go to reports. And one of the things I wanted to show you under reports is the Club Excellence Award. So the club, so there's a lot of information here about reports. You can get club giving. I may have access to this just because I'm the foundation chair, so that might not be something that everybody has access to. There's membership data, membership leads. I wanted to show you the Club Excellence Award. Let's see if this comes up and shows what I think it's supposed to show. This pop-up's blocked. All right. Let's try that again. Because this is going to lead us into goal setting. Because a Club Excellence Award is a citation that your club gets once you've met certain goals, and you get to decide what the goals are. So this is the club. We've paid our invoice, NA, because it's not due, so it's still green. Goals completed 10, and citation earned no. So the red is not quite there, but you have to get to 13 goals, and Rotary lists a whole bunch of goals for you. So you don't have to come up with the specific goals. You just have to pick them from a list, and we're going to go over that tomorrow in depth. But then set your target. So for example, a membership goal, you might be at 30 members and you set your goal of increasing by 1 member. You don't have to set a lofty goal. You just have to set a goal. And so if you say, I want to be at 31 members, then when you achieve that goal, you document that you have 31 members, then you've met that goal. So this isn't really an exercise in meeting some high lofty standard. It's an exercise in planning, setting goals, and meeting goals. And a lot of clubs don't bother ever setting goals. And unless you set goals, how do you know where you're going to end up other than just pushed away by the wind? So let me go back to, I think the easiest way to go back is here. It's going to do the same thing again. So again, that's how to manage your club details. There's one other thing I wanted to see if I could. Oh, this is the club goals. And so when I click on goals, it'll take you to a link that takes you to Rotary Club Central. Now, Rotary Club Central is also a Rotary International product. Excuse me. And we're going to go into depth on that tomorrow. But there are lots of ways to get there. So you can click on the link here to get there. you can go back to this page here, the tab at the top, click on Rotary Club Central here. Or you can just type in the link. I think it's RCC. No, I need to look it up. But there's a direct link. Easy enough to find. Yeah, rcc.rotary.org. And I'll put that in the chat. So you might want to have an opportunity to check it out before tomorrow's session. But that is where to get to the goals. Now, I'm not going to steal my thunder and go into that there. But before we do, I want to go back to reports. And I want to see if I can pull up the membership leads. These are just reports. And so when Rotary assigns prospects to your club, somebody goes online to the Rotary.org website, they're new to your area, they don't know anybody in the club, and they click on the Join Rotary button and said, I'm interested in joining a Rotary Club. And what happens is the club president and the membership director, and if there's a standard email address for the club, you'll eventually get that information. But first goes to the district. Bob Sartwell is our district person who shepherds those leads. Dave Vogel's on the call. He's our membership chair. He's involved with this process. And so they're leads that are qualified. So they may be reached out to. They may have a conversation with them about when and where your club meets. This doesn't seem to be working for me today. I'll get some working tomorrow. But I wanted to show you a little bit more about how the membership leads work. But this is not the way to do it. But it's important to make sure that somebody actually follows up on that and tracks that. A couple other things that you can see under here. There is the link to the Learning Center, which is actually up. So you have other tabs. So under the My Rotary tab is what we were talking about. There's the Participate tab where you'll get other information about all the different programs we have, grants, information about projects, information about the foundation. There's the events and connections. International Convention is right there. District conferences, different aspects of Rotary Media. We'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow as well. Knowledge and resources here. Again, there's another fourth link to Rotary Club Central. Different projects, membership materials, a lot of good stuff here. And there's the Learning Center. And so if you haven't been in the Learning Center yet or recently, I highly recommend checking it out. One is there's a Club President's Basics and there's a Club President Advanced that we encourage you to take. It's self-paced learning, and you could do it at your own pace and it doesn't take long. Some of the courses are relatively short. But like I said, we're going to go over more about Rotary Club Central specifically tomorrow. If you have specific questions, Stuart, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Chris. So what you were just going over with all the different tabs, I assume you get there by signing in under myrotary.org. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's the first step, and you'll see my account, my profile, and then there are other choices that will appear that will highlight the tabs that you were talking about. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's something that's certainly worth playing with. There's a lot of information there. And if you have some specific questions, you're welcome to, shoot them to me in the chat pod. So next, I want to reintroduce Pastor Governor Barton Goldenberg. He's got another session here on crafting a winning blueprint we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting and strategic planning before our final segment with Dave and Ronnie. Laura, would you like to turn your camera back on? And oh, your camera's on. There you are. And you're muted. So.
Okay, first, Chris, can you give me a check? You can see the presentation?
I can see it. It's now in presentation mode, and I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your past hour. This is actually two short presentations done on purpose. One is something that you're all very familiar with and probably have heard this many times before, and that's the value and the importance of planning effectively for your year. I don't want to bore you. It's not my intention. But what this is a primer for a very important exercise we'll be doing at CPETS together. And I'll explain what that exercise is, a few slides from now. But for now, I just wanted to reintroduce the whole concept of strategic planning with the understanding that each year priorities change both at Rotary and at the president-elect, the new president coming in and the new district governor, Mandy. And so you too want to remain flexible and think about your own plan, even if you have one already that you're quite happy with, okay? And with that in mind, I just make the obvious statement, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. And I know that's a very simplistic oversight, but I believe the most successful clubs are those that actually have a plan, execute against it, review it regularly, make corrections, and carry on. And so the failure to plan for me is the plan to fail. And so you flip it around the other way. The ability to plan, is your way of succeeding in the club. Just an observation. Okay. I'm not going into any great detail on any of this. I'm just giving you the 4 steps we're going to cover at CPETS. Go into each detail very, very briefly. So in creating your strategic plan or your club strategic plan, it would be my observation, we start with the mothership, and that is Rotary International. And it has its own priorities and objectives. You may have heard of them, but this is the RI strategic planning and priorities that were created under Tom Thorfinson. He was the chief strategy officer, and it's the 4 areas that Rotary International wants all of us to focus on across the world, across all 35,000 clubs. And obviously, it's impossible to have goals that are going to be of equal importance across the world, because we're in different stages of development and priorities and geographical locations and environments and so forth. So that's their best understanding. I'm not going to go into it. I'm sure you've seen it before. I'm seeing your division statement. But the bottom line is Rotary is focused on, and Mandy already kind of alluded to this, increasing our impact by making sure that people really understand those few areas that we are focusing on and doing well, and eradicating polio and focusing on our core programs, and then doing this measurement so we can talk about impact. But equally important, Rotary is keen on expanding our reach beyond our current membership and into more diversity, new different channels for membership. They want to just make the clubs reflect the community and even work within the community, have their own clubs. The enhanced participant engagement is, I think, for me, very, very important. But that's where you now are engaging your club members more effectively. And you're developing a value proposition for engagement of members. And you're offering opportunities for professional development within the club and within the district, and for that matter, even within the zone. And so that's the third one. And then the fourth one is really more for the board, but they wanted people to be more adaptable in saying yes or no to a new initiative. And that's this whole concept of increase our ability to adapt. So that's the mothership speaking. And now what I want to get to is the remaining steps, again, just a high overview in preparation for the CPETS exercise of step 2, 3, and 4. So what typically happens is an incoming president, in this case Mario, will look at Rotary's planning priorities. And we'll say, I'd like to pull out certain things from those and implement them during my year, but not all. I want the freedom and choice to implement some of my own priorities. And then Mandy, who will meet with Mario at this wonderful International Assembly next month, will, it's well known, will be drinking Kool-Aid every single day. And she will have come in with some ideas. We already discussed them at the very beginning, and I'll repeat them in just a moment, of what she wants to do. But it's very likely she could come away from the International Assembly with deepen goals or change goals based on Mario's priorities, which of course in turn are based on Rotary's priorities. And then at the end of the day, which means in a month, Mandy will be very clear, CPETS and elsewhere, on her goals and values. And you as president, club presidents, will reflect on those. And you'll come up with your own plans for how you're going to implement some, perhaps not all of Mandy's objectives, but to include objectives that you may have of your own. So I wrote just a short one-pager for you to think about. So those are the Rotary objectives that I went over: increase impact, expand reach, engage participants more effectively, and be more adaptive. Mario, through all the interviews that Mandy's been able to look at and some of the discussions, thinks, and that's why I have the word emerging plans, he's got a big focus on public image. He's going to place a big focus on service. And he's going to place a big focus on Rotaract. Now, again, that'll all be confirmed. It'll be part of his theme, all the stuff that Mandy's going to see. But for now, that's as best as we can do to understand. And so you can see he picked up on the public image, and he picked up on the value and the importance of service coming from Rotary. Mandy, at the beginning of tonight's discussion, has her own emerging, again, I say emerging, plans and priorities. She's told you that collaboration and service is very important to her, and that kind of picking up where NOMI is working, collaborating with other clubs on similar service projects, so pulling together multiple clubs. She told you about how important it is to get the word out in the whole public image side and tell the communities about the great work we're doing instead of being that hidden secret. And she has come back and said membership is fairly important, but follow up with those that have expressed interest as your kind of whole membership pipeline. So she's kind of, this is a more structured approach to membership. It's kind of like what I told you Russell Lacey and I did. It puts leads at the top of the funnel, what's called a sales funnel, or in this case, a membership funnel. And it does certain things with the member to bring them down the funnel to make them a customer, or in this case, a member. And those things include, inviting them to meetings, to service projects, to social events. Once they become a member, to get them involved in greeting people and learning the club and so forth. So this is what Mandy says. Now, if we follow this priority, you somewhat have emerging thoughts from Mandy. Now comes your turn. So what I've asked you to do for the next couple of weeks until we meet again at PETS is select in your own mind, if you haven't already done so, 2 to 4 strategic goals for your presidential year. And these are goals that you'll continuously focus on throughout the year. So these are the big ones, right? These are the core priorities or goals that you want to make. And then what we're going to do at CPETS is we're going to take each one of your strategic goals. And again, I said 2 to 4. Anything less than 2, I think, is too little. Anything more than 4, I think, is unachievable. So I can live with 2. I like 3, sometimes 4. It depends on what the goals are. But write them down or think them through. And then in CPETS, we're going to take, it's an exercise. Each person will do it. Obviously, the presidents will do it separately, but you're going to be at the same table. And then you're going to compare and talk to each other. But you're going to say, I had as a strategic goal X, and you'll see what the exercise is. So if that's your goal, could you tell me the top ways you're going to implement it? Tell me the 3 or 4 tactical things that you're going to do to implement that goal. And each one of your goals will have kind of a little mini plan of implementation. Or you'll have thought through what you need to do to make it work. And then at these tables, we'll turn around to each other, and I'll give you time to talk to each other and say, this was my goal, this is what I thought, I'm going to do. What do you think? And so you're going to get some camaraderie amongst your fellow presidents, but hopefully you'll get a better set of strategic goals and implementations. But again, that's up to you and how the whole thing works. Okay, that's what I wanted to say on the strategic planning side for now. Again, this is a primer for a very important exercise you'll be doing at CPET. People have quite enjoyed it in the past, and that is getting their goals on paper and running a actual exercise to help implement those and looking at some of the key implementation things they have to do from a people perspective, a financial perspective, etc. So I'm going to stop here for a minute and say if there are any questions regarding this piece of the discussion, this would be an appropriate time to ask them. You can ask them later, by the way, but this would be an appropriate time. And if not, I'm going to move on to the budgeting side. So let me just wait a minute. Chris, you can monitor the chat, see if there's anything that might be asked.
I think we're good for now.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's go to the second mini kind of discussion. And they're actually in order. So why am I discussing budgeting after we've looked at strategic priorities? And the answer, at least for me, is obvious. Well, your budget has to support the priorities. And until you know your priorities, how do you know what to budget? So if you take, for example, and your goal is to create youth conferences in your local club area, well, there's a certain cost associated with that. Or if your goal is to do X number of service projects or X type of service project, there's a budget, there's a need for money for that. So that's why I think it's important to set the priorities first. And I think, I would encourage you to think about that, and we'll kind of go into more detail at CPETs, but then you can really fully develop it and present it to your club before you take over, the office of presidency. But that gives you time also to think about, well, what do I need to spend to do this, right? So now let's go to creating a winning blueprint on the budgeting side. And again, nothing brilliant here, at least I don't think it's very brilliant, but I think it's things that we need to take into account as we move from strategic priorities or goals to successful implementation of those strategic priorities and goals. So as president, whether you like it or not, you're somewhat restricted in the revenues that you have. It's member dues, and then you can have different activities. They could be anything from, big fundraisers like the one I talked about in Frederick, where you earn huge sums of money, to a bake sale in your local community where you earn less money, or anything in between. But your revenue is very much fixed on the actual amount of dues that are paid and are left over after you just, subtract meals and give to the annual fund or whatever your obligations are in your club. That's what's left over to work with. And then you've got these fundraisers that can be supplementing those revenues. I honestly don't know any other revenue streams except, maybe a very affluent person that leaves you a lot of money or something, but that's, less likely to happen. So you got to work within some sort of a fixed revenue budget. Okay, then you're going to go back in and say, well, in order to do the projects that I talked about in my 2 to 4 strategic goals, I need this amount of money, right? I mean, I just can tell you that I did a lot of youth conferences in my club when I tried to get youth to come in. That's my way of growing from 29 to more. And it costs about $1,000 for a really good event. Anyway, 500 to 1,000. It depended on where we did it and what prizes we gave and how we promoted it. So I had to budget that in, right? I wanted 3 of them during the year. That was $3,000. I had to be really careful how I budgeted. I'll never forget there was one president, it was my classmate, and he was just so elated to be president that he went out and he bought very beautiful stationery. It had his name embossed in it. It said, "From the desk of the president." It had gold, leafing all around it. I think he blew $2,000 on that. That's probably not the best way to spend your budget. So all I'm saying is look at your strategic goals, understand what revenues you have to work within, understand what expenses it's likely to take to realize those strategic goals. And now you can figure out, do I have enough money to make this happen? And if not, if I have to earn more money, how are we going to do that? Through fundraising? Or do I cut back on my strategic goals and vision? I hope that makes sense. The third bullet is nothing more than the obvious. Avoid wishful thinking. Anybody that's done budgeting knows that if you miss your Q1, quarter one results, it makes it harder to make it up in quarter two. And if you miss quarter one and quarter two, it makes it very hard to pick it up and make it up in quarter three. And if you miss 1, 2, and 3, you probably won't make it up in quarter four. So if anything, achieve your Q1, your quarter one budget make sure that the revenues promised, the expenses you make that one work, because that'll get you off to a healthy start. And wishful thinking that we'll make it up as the year goes on, I don't see that happening an awful lot. I'm just telling you. Okay, I'm a big stickler on balanced budget. Now, some clubs have reserves, so you can spend more than you actually bring in, and you dig into the reserves. And some clubs, foundations and or boards say that's perfectly fine. I'm not here to judge that. That's your club's decision. But most clubs try to get a balanced budget. I have 100 to spend, 100 of revenues that I raised. I have 100 to spend on expenses and the programs I do. And I just believe that's a good way to keep financial discipline inside the club and make sure everybody's realistic about what really things cost and don't cost. And then that's just my way of thinking. Okay, I talked about this already, but be transparent. I believe it's very important as a part of keeping members in the know that you share your budget with all members well before you're inducted as president of your club. Let them know exactly what your goals are and how you're organizing the club and what you're planning to do and what are the metrics you're applying and what it's likely to cost, and this is what the revenues are for the club, and this is how we're going to balance the budget. Or if we're over, we're going to spend that money on a party at the end of the year. Or if we're under, we're going to have to figure out how to fundraise or whatever it may be to make up the difference. But just be transparent. That'll make people feel so much better about being a part of a club that is open and transparent with even things like money. So I strongly recommend that. Again, just because of my financial discipline and private sector background, I monitor my budget monthly. There isn't a month that goes by that I don't sit down and look at, this was my revenue I expected. Did I meet it? Yes or no? These were the expenses I expected to incur. Did I incur them? Yes or no? And if there's an overage or an underage in revenue or an overage and underage in expenses, I kind of stop the game and say, okay, what are we going to do to correct this like now? Again, avoid wishful thinking, not tomorrow, now. So that's just my way of looking at things. And then, of course, comes the question, well, what if you do deviate from your budget? And seriously, lots of clubs do it. There are, as I've already alluded to, some clubs have reserves. So from one year to the next, they don't spend as much of the revenue that they took in on expenses. So that may be available to you in the sense of reserves. That's one way to certainly, if you deviate, how you can pick that up. There are, donors that will step up and say, this is such a great club and I've been a member for 35 years and I realize we're spent a little bit more than we expected, but I'd like to pony up $5,000 to help this club get over the hump. And again, that's all a part of knowing your members. My club, we have a year-end drive for kind of raising money. We raised almost $70,000 by asking club members to give money. Now, again, I said we're an 80-person club, so it's easier. But, people that love your club are willing to put up the money that is required. And we see it all the time, at least in my club. So if you deviate from your budget, open transparency, go to your donors if you've got donors that are identified, go to your reserves if you do have reserves. You really can't touch the club foundation. It typically is separate from the club implementation or operational, way you implement it. So that's kind of, there's a wall between your foundation, if you have one, and the club budget. But those are the real ways that I know of deviating from your budget. Go to your reserves, go to wealthy donors, and run more fundraisers. That's the only ways that I really know how to do it. Or obviously cut back on expenses, right? Say, well, I was planning to do 3 conferences, I'm cutting it back to 2. But just run a tight ship. It'll be respected by your members. You'll feel good about it. And if you have a surplus, like we have a surplus at the end of last year, my club, we're a little bit late on this, but our Christmas party is Saturday. It's at a beautiful restaurant. We're paying everybody's way just because we have the money. And so that's another good feeling for the club. One other thing I want to say before I open this to a little bit of chat or questions and answers. At the last session on Saturday, Ashley Waters from the Carroll Creek Club made an observation about how her club budgets for the year. And I thought it was actually quite clever. I think she called it, what did she call it, Chris? Forward budgeting or something like this. And this is how it works. They don't set their budget beyond what they spent last year. So let's just say they spent 100 last year. They start their budget at 100 this year. Or let's say they have revenue last year of 100. They start with an assumption of revenues 100. So they don't deviate from their past learnings. They take those into account when they create their revenue budget and particularly their expense budget. And that way it kind of forces you to not only balance a budget, but you could have pleasant surprises because you're using last year's figures and you may be able to raise more money this year than you did last year. I thought that was just a clever recommendation that she made from the Carroll Creek Club, which, as you know, is about 210 members. So you kind of listen to that a little bit. So that's what I wanted to talk about on the budgeting. Again, I am happy to open this up, Chris, to Q&A, or I'm happy to give people time back on a, I've got 9 minutes. I give 9 minutes back. It's up to you and the members of this distinguished group of president-elects.
Well, let's go ahead and see if anybody has any questions here. And Barton, did you want to talk about the budgeting worksheet as well?
Yeah, so
that's in the resources, and I can put that in the chat as well.
Please do. There are two things that I gave you, or Chris was kind enough to accept me giving you. And one was the Rotary International Strategic Planning Guide. It's not bad. And Rotary has a lot of resources. We all love them dearly, and they really do a nice job on many of these things. And the Strategic Planning Guide is pretty darn good. I enclose that, and Chris, on the back of your agenda, there's the QR code that'll allow you to download that. The second item Chris is talking about now is a budget worksheet. And it's actually an Excel budget worksheet for those that are comfortable with Excel. And what it does is it lists the typical revenues that a club raises, and it lists the typical expenses that a club spends. And that in itself is a good exercise. Say, oh, geez, I forgot about that. Or, wow, I didn't think about that. And what it does is it allows you to mock up your, let's just call it draft budget, using that worksheet, and you'll see if it balances, at the end of the day. So that worksheet is also available through the QR code. And I would strongly recommend you play around with it. It's not hard to use at all, but it's kind of good for two reasons. It reminds you of the things that you could earn revenue on. It reminds you of the expenses you forgot are expenses you have to spend money on. And it gives you, at the end of the day, some real figures to work with as you formulate your budget in support of your strategic goals.
Yeah, I found it's really useful to kind of get your picture out there, a picture of where you're going to spend your money ahead of time in the budgeting cycle, because you'll identify, yeah, I didn't think about that. We need to plan for an extra $1,000, and then share it with the people who've been around the block once or twice. Yep. So that's great. So we have a hand up, David.
Yeah. Hey, Barton, one of the things you did touch on Saturday was the advantage of doing club surveys to help you shape things like your goals and your budgets, direction of the club. Can you touch on that for just a minute?
Yeah, of course. So, for example, in a club survey, you could say, I'll just speak for my club because I know it so well. It does say, we have the purple tea for the last 18 years, 19 years. It earns us about $35,000, but we feel that we really would like to have a stroller event. Do you support that, yes or no? And depending upon how many people come back with yes, that tells us whether we have the legs to make this happen, or likely legs. Or we will ask, we have, our foundation gives about $80,000 away every year, okay? And we'll ask, what is the way you want to spend that money as we give away money to other clubs or other causes in the region? If we come back to our own club, we'll say, for example, because I think we have very expensive dues, not the most expensive, but we're $1,200 a year, which is, not cheap. It includes an absolutely delicious breakfast at the, Jose Andres award-winning Spanish diner, but still it's expensive. So one of the things that we very often ask in the survey is it costs us about, and I don't remember the figure now, but $18 for a buffet breakfast. Do you feel we should cut that back and spend that money elsewhere? And it gives everybody an opportunity to say, no, you can't take away that breakfast. That's the greatest reason I come to Rotary. Or I don't really care. I mean, why don't you cut it back? We don't need the avocados. We just need the ratatouille or whatever it may be. So again, we use that survey to feel people out on how they'd like to spend their money. We can get into some personal things once in a while in the survey. We could ask questions like this. You have to be always careful with these things. We're deeply grateful to the wonderful members of our club, many of whom give annually and have done so over the past 10 years. We want to thank those members for their gratuitous and wonderful things they're doing for the club. Out of curiosity, do you intend to hold, increase, or decrease your donations to the club this year? It doesn't put anybody on the spot. It doesn't ask for monetary figures, but let's just say it comes back clearly. People are not going to give as much. Guess what? We're going to probably pull back on expenses. Okay, it just gives us it's a leading indicator that this ain't right here. Or let's just say that they say, yeah, we're gonna give more. Well, that might give me a little more flexibility, or you in this case, a little more flexibility on, potential revenue that we could spend or even increase expenses. So I think, Dave, that might be what you're talking about, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
Barton, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When we, one of the things that I did in my year, and BJ Chamberlain has made extensive use of surveys. She's created what I call mini surveys, because each survey is 4 or 5 questions. Each is aimed at a focus area. And what it's allowed us to do is reposition the club so that we better support the good work that we're trying to do in the community, and we don't overtax the membership of the club. Some of that's patterned after Daniel from your club, who has done an outstanding job with surveys, and in fact created the exit survey that we use at the district membership level when we're trying to get a handle on why do people leave our clubs. Is it, because there was a big thinking at one point that it was cost, and cost could be a factor. But as it's turned out, most of this has been club satisfaction or club engagement as the 2 biggest contributors to why people leave clubs. So I think the surveys that you've mentioned before, and we talked about on Saturday too, are outstanding ways for an incoming club president to gauge where their club is headed. So
excellent, Dave. And he's made the point that again, I gave you Daniel's his email, and just say Bart asked for the vanilla version of the club survey, or whatever he calls it these days, the club survey, and he'll be delighted to get it out to you. And if you get really stuck on how to analyze it, he just can run it through the mill. He's got a whole thing set up, and it'll kick out pretty slides and all the rest. So I would like to reinforce what Dave said, and you can ask whatever you want. You're the president. You just have to ask, and there's some good questions, by the way, in the survey, the vanilla version. I would say, you'll probably adopt 70% of them, maybe more, and you might adjust some of them yourself, but it's a pretty darn good starting place.
Yeah, I think it is too, and even if you break it up and you make small surveys, it's going to help you as you go forward.
Great. Well, Barton, thank you very much for this very informative talk on budgeting and planning. I appreciate your help.
Let me close, Chris, by just mentioning to our distinguished president-elects, we all love Rotary. We love our clubs. We love our district. We love the mothership. But I want to pay particular call out to your incoming district governor, whom I've had the pleasure of working with for the past 5 years. Maybe a little bit more now, probably even a bit more. She's always impressed me from the very first days she comes. She's got her MBA and she's got a few other degrees, and she's always asking the right questions, the penetrating questions, the good questions. And that always stood out. I'm thinking she's really on top of her game here. So here she has an opportunity now to lead. What is it, 59 or 60 clubs? I don't know the exact number anymore, but I couldn't imagine a better DG to lead at this time. And I think you're very fortunate to have Mandy coming in. She's bright as a whippersnapper. She's very listens carefully. She's empathetic and sympathetic when appropriate. And I think she's going to do a great job. And I can't wait to work with her and to learn from her. So I just wanted to make that shout out to all of you.
Thank you, Bart.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Now, our final segment here, Dave Vogel. Do you have a partner in crime in this? I see Ronnie's not here today.
No, I'm going to do this one. I'll fly this one on my own. Well,
okay.
Actually, not really true, because I'm going to engage
Excellent.
At least
Glad you might.
3, maybe 4 people that are in our audience because they happen to be double dippers. They've been presidents before, and they're going to be presidents again this year. I'm first going to tell you the reason I don't have a presentation for you to look at is because you guys are the presentation. You guys are the key to what we're going to do going forward this next year. The training that we're doing right now and the CPETS training that we'll do out at Chantilly will give you additional skills that you can bring in. It will give you opportunities to work with your incoming class of presidents, to network. I'll tell you that when I was a club president, I was club president of the Parole Club. Right now I'm the district membership chair. I kind of got told into that, but it's been a fun role for me. But the president's role that I had was the most fun role of all. I'd agree with Barton and anybody else who's been a president before. I didn't want to give it up at the end of my year because, of course, at that point, at the end of a year, now you know what it's all about. All of the concerns you may have had as a president coming in have gone away because you figured out how to make it work, right? And each of you who have not been a president before probably have some level of concern. But I'm going to call on Sue Weber because Sue Weber, yeah, see, I told you some of you guys were going to be part of the presentation. Sue Weber is an incoming president, but she's also a past president. She's also a past AG. She was my AG and trained me to become an AG. So, Sue, why did you step back into the role?
Our club, we're 153 members strong. Been around for over 100 years, but we literally just didn't have anyone who wanted to step up to the plate. So we revisited all the past presidents prior to me that were still members of the club to see if they wanted a second turn, and they made it all the way down the list, and I'm the only one who agreed to do it. Since accepting the role to do it, I have lined up the board for 26-27, and that includes a president-elect nominee, which we have not done in prior years. So hopefully that will be something that they continue to do.
They're lucky to have you, Sue. I think that you're
Thanks,
a
Dave.
fantastic year. I really do. I'll also tell you, you touched on something, and this will be true for all of you president-elects that are in clubs today. You have past presidents that are part of your club right now that you have as an advantage to be able to talk over what you're trying to do. In our club, we call that the Past Presidents Council. And it is made up of the only way you qualify for it is you have to be a past president of the club. We happen to have a lot. Our club is parole. We haven't been around a long time. So a lot of our club presidents are still around with us. We've also had a couple of them do exactly what Sue's done, which is step back up because the role is a lot of fun. But the advantage you've got is if you run into issues, you've got somebody who's already done what you're trying to do that you can ask questions of. And whether you have it as a formal council or whether you just make use of your past presidents, take the time, make use of your past presidents. It will help you when you get into a jam. They can help you to get a coalition within the club to get behind maybe a new way to help the community. All of us are looking for new ways to help the community, and all of our clubs have major impact within each of our communities. That's why people should join us, because we do that. And if you're sitting there and you talk to somebody and they say, I want to have an impact, they should join us. I don't care which club, I don't care which part of Rotary, they should join a Rotary Club because we impact everywhere we go. You guys are the key to that. I'm going to call on another second time president because I know he's still on. James King, are you still out there? James?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So James, you're a second time past president. Why did you do this?
Well, much like our previous, nobody else wanted to step up, so I guess I'm doing it. But we have a lot. Our club has a lot of people that are they've been around for a while, and they all have done the role, and we're slowly getting new blood in, but it's a challenge, and until we get that new blood in, I guess I'm stepping up and keeping it going. But
That's good. Are you having, do you have any concerns? You need support in any areas?
I'm always concerned. But yeah, we're getting through it. Yeah, it's just.
Oh, so it shouldn't be an unknown thing to anybody else who's going to become a club president. If you've got a concern, that's actually a good thing. It'll keep you on your toes. It'll keep you to a point where you can start asking other people for help. Michael Nagid, I know you're out there too.
Hi there.
Michael is
Yes,
another past president who's about to become president again. He's also an AG, current AG for his area. Michael, why did you step forward? And by the way, congratulations on that outstanding membership event that you had the other night.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thank you for helping us. Yes, this is going to be my third time as a club president, and one of the reasons, I guess, we are a small club, and nobody wants to step up. It looks like we have been rotating the club presidency between 3 people right now. So they asked me if I want to step in again. So I decided, well, maybe I'll step in and help again, because no one wants to do it. But I'm hoping that we grow our club and get new members, and so we could delegate more officers to other people rather than, recycling the same people over and over. And this is one of my concerns right now, because we have been losing members. We've been gaining every year a few, but then they're not staying, either because of work or something, and they have to move around, move away, or, so they had left the club. And that's one of my concerns, really, about the membership. So I'm hoping to work with you in the district and maybe get a few new blood in the club.
Yeah, you had 14 people, 14 potential members at your membership event, right? That was about right.
That's correct. Yeah, we had just about that, but it looks like there were a few that were interested to show up or help us in getting the club. So I'm hoping that, I think at least a couple of them filled up applications. So I'm hoping that we'll get a few new members.
So,
that's correct.
So since I'm the district membership chair, I'll put in a plug right now. Members matter to us, not just because we just want more members. Members matter to us because they allow a club that's smaller to extend its reach even with its own leadership team. They allow every club to extend their reach within the community. More hands make lighter work. If you look at Sue's club is the Annapolis Club, and they do the annual crab feast at the Naval Academy Stadium. And that's an all hands on deck function. They've got a 153 member club. Every single member of that club helps work that event. But they also end up with, I don't know how many you had this year. Was it, were you at 3,000 or 4,000 this year? 2,500?
In attendance?
Yeah.
No, we were actually under 2,000.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like that. I was at that event. It was phenomenal. But that's every hand on deck. And that's the other reason why you need more members, so that you don't burn out your whole club. Everybody can share the load. It's an advantage. But you guys will help guide what that membership needs to look like. You guys can do surveys. You guys can reach out to people that you know in the community. The biggest handicap to getting people in is we have to ask them. They're not just, as a rule, we get some leads. And Bob Sartwell is our lead coordinator from RI. But as a rule, you want to ask people to come join you. You want to do what the Lakeshore Savannah Park did the other night and identify a cadre of people and have an event. So I think, Chris, I know I'm running up on time. So I think what I'm going to do is stop at that point and see if anybody's got any specific questions. But my objective for you guys is to recognize you're not alone, that all of us will be happy to work with you at any point. You have a district governor who is phenomenal. I'm lucky to be working with her next year as one of her lieutenant governors. Right now I'm the membership chair, but I'll be a lieutenant governor next year. So I'll be working with all of you as well. And I'll see all of you out at Chantilly at CPETS.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And I'll see if anybody wants to ask a question, if you'd raise your hand. And while we're waiting for that to happen, I just want to comment as well as a fellow 3-time past president, once of the Fort Myer Rotary Club and twice of the Rotary Club of Charles County. I wanted to say I was not a second-time president or third-time president because nobody else stepped up. Actually, we had people in line, but I was having so much fun doing it. And honestly, the person who was coming behind me was relatively new to Rotary and was relatively young. And I asked him ahead of time, I said, would you mind if I threw my hat in the ring for a second time in a row? Because I think I could do such a better job the second time around. And he didn't mind having the extra year to prepare. And I certainly did enjoy the second time around. We have a lobster festival that the president-elect runs. That was so much easier to do the second time. And then running the club was very easy to do. Just the routine was down a second year in a row. In a lot of ways, I wish Rotary made it a standard for a 2-year term. Now, before you put your tomatoes and eggs away, but it really would make things a lot more stable. But anyway, we do have a couple questions. Stuart, your hand's raised.
Your comment.
Sure.
So, I mean, this is my first year as president, and I'm going into the second term. I think by the time you figure out your first year, now you're ready to accomplish something, because I think
absolutely
first year you're learning what's going on, and it's new. So I think you need a couple of years to get into the groove of things, and
well, and that's very true, and that's all the more reason to have a robust succession planning too. So maybe the people who are stepping into president aren't just being asked 6 months prior, but they're serving as a full year of president-elect, and they've served as an officer ahead of time. So anyway, I wanted to get to wrap up with Stuart's question, and then I'll give Mandy a final word of the day. Sir, you're muted.
Dave, thank you very much for your presentation. Dave Vogel.
Yep.
Would you mind, please, giving your direct email address in the chat?
Oh, I'll be happy to do that. I'll be happy to work with any of you at any point, whether it's on membership or it doesn't really matter. I love Rotary. So like Barton said, I drank the Kool-Aid in my aha moment, which was delivering books to students. And so I'm a big fan, although I have to be convinced sometimes to take jobs, but I'll be happy. I'm going to put it in now.
Please do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Stuart. And thank you, David. And just before I ask Mandy to come up and give a final word, what I'll do tomorrow. So tomorrow our agenda, we're going to start at, we have 5:30 on the agenda, is just to check in, check your mic, make sure everything works so you don't get stuck in cyberspace. We'll start promptly at 6 o'clock again. But if anybody wants to show up at 5:30 and go over how to look up like contact information in DACDB, I'd be happy to set aside a little time then. So just consider that like a free-for-all office hour question and answer with me if you're able to show up early. So and with that, I'm going to turn us over to Mandy so she can say some final words and kick us out of here tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. And thank you all again for attending. Thank you to our presenters for your hard work on getting all of the information together. And at 8:29, I will officially close the meeting. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow.